This is the Surly Grognards for Tuesday, September 25th, 2012. I'm Peter Bowman, and as usual, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. Say hello to the people, Eric.
I'm not saying hello to anyone. They're all jerks.
That's
Hi,
not very
guys.
nice. So this week we're going to be talking about the differences and strengths and weaknesses of sandbox-style campaigns versus more directed campaigns. Um, So we'll talk about basically what those terms mean, sort of, how they're different from one another, and what's sort of their strengths and weaknesses are, and whether one is better than the other. I'll give you the preview to my actual answer. That is,
Yes.
neither superior. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well said, Eric. So, Eric, when I say a sandbox RPG, before I forget, we should cover one last little bit. And as usual, if we have time at the end of after we're done talking about this, we will answer questions during the last portion of the show. If you'd like to have your question answered on air, you can either say what it is. You can talk to us here in the chat, and we'll try to get to it at the end of the show. Or you can email us at surlygrognards@yahoo.com. That's surlygrognards @yahoo.com. So, Eric, let's go back to my
Yes.
little sort of question here. When I say sandbox RPG campaign, what do you think of?
I usually think of something where pretty much everything is determined based on the impetus of the players. Um, if there is an overarching plot, it's decided entirely by what the players are doing or not doing, and whatnot.
Right.
It's like playing Grand Theft Auto, except that the plot that you can choose to ignore.
Right. So, I mean, I've never actually seen a campaign that is completely sandboxy. That's a complete sandbox. There's usually at least some sort of
They usually I've encountered them. The idea is to start out sandbox and they slowly become more directed, or be, things just sort of become listless and uninteresting, and the campaign falls apart.
yeah.
So
I mean, the more sandboxy games I've been involved in, usually it is basically a big sandbox, but
yeah,
and by sandbox, we do mean basically sort of, it's the players take their characters, they're put down into an area, they're told what the area is like, and the GM has NPCs and their NPCs' motivations and such planned out, and then, so knows how the NPCs act, and then just lets the players do what they want to do.
mm,
And then the campaign is in the sort of the most in the most pure sandbox game would basically be what would be the camp basically things reacting to what the players are doing. I've never done anything quite that completely open ended. Usually, what in the games I've done that are similar to that, or I'm going for a sandbox type feel, I usually have at least an idea of other things that are happening in the area of space where the players are, um, and assuming that the players and if and what will happen if the players choose to interact with those things that are going on. At
right.
which point, it's not actually a directed campaign because the players could choose to say, well, screw this, we're leaving, um, which has
Which we've
happened,
never done before.
which you guys did, and I don't fault you guys for doing that in the Pirates game.
We totally didn't do that. That was shut up.
I believe you guys said, okay, we've had enough of the Marcon. We don't want
We're
to play with the evil spiders. We're leaving.
evil spiders make us feel like lab rats, which we totally were, so we're leaving.
And
Lab
that was
rats
a
leave, we can. We got a spaceship.
perfectly rational thing to do. And it was also an opportune time for Chris and I to swap GM duties in the campaign.
Right. Because I could tell Chris is champing at the bit to run something.
Yep.
Probably because of issues in his other game. So,
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So so yeah, that game is the Pirates game for when I was running it was it really was about as sandboxy as I tend to get.
It was extremely sandboxing. We were starting to get a little aimless.
Yes, and that's part of the reason I
You
made
threw
sure
them
to give you guys an opportunity
yes.
to get the hell out of Dodge. That's why I dropped the more complete star charts on you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they've mined what they're willing to do in this part of space. Time for
Yeah.
them to get the hell out of Dodge. I mean, there was something I could have done with the Marcon, but I was pretty clear that you guys really didn't want your characters at least had wanted nothing to do with
Oh,
them.
we liked the Marcon. Our characters are terrified of fuck and didn't want anything to do with the scary space spiders.
Yeah. It was fun, but at any rate, and there are other games I've run that are sort of fairly sandboxy. Let's see, off the top of my head, again, well, the Amber game I ran on during Thursday night with Peter Shaw, who's there in the chat, and a few of our other friends, was pretty sandboxy. I mean, I had a basic plot that was going on in the background, but how the players
Amber tends
interact.
to be pretty damn sandboxy.
Well, given that the PCs have the ability to basically go to whatever world they want to go to, whenever they want to, you kind of have to be sandboxy.
Yeah, and half of any good Amber campaign is the players trying to screw one another.
Yes, or at least plotting against each other in some way, or
Yes.
at least keeping information from each other. It's not necessarily that they're trying to screw the other guys over. It's more that they want to make sure that they can forward their own agendas.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
And if that happens to screw them over, screw over a relative, all the better. Let's say like the relative.
Yeah, but even if you like the relative, then they might become a hindrance to one's plans later on. So, best to simply eliminate them outright, and then eat them to prove your dominance.
Yep.
And then show it off to everyone else.
Well, you don't.
I'm thinking too much like Skaven again.
You are thinking like a Skaven. And in fact, actually killing your siblings is not necessarily the best plan in Amber.
This is true. They sometimes come back.
Or yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky, they come
If
back.
you're not lucky, they actually use their blood curse on you, and you're fucked.
Yeah. Oh, right, I forgot they had the blood curse thing.
Uh-huh. So, from the sandbox, though, we also then go to a more directed style of game. And so, as you can probably guess, a directed campaign is sort of the antithesis of a sandbox game. It's where there's a clear, directed plot that the players are expected from the outset to be participating in and going along with. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't freedom of choice for the players to do what they want to do within the confines of the thing. Otherwise, you're getting into a completely railroaded game.
Which nobody likes, and we've all been in.
Yes, but and a great example of a directed type of campaign. Most of the directed campaigns I've seen and been involved in have been military themed in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. That's an easy way to do it without it being ridiculous.
Exactly. A prime example of that would be the Mech Warrior game I was running with you guys.
Yep.
The players were playing mercenaries. They were mercenary Mech Warriors, and so it's a directed game because I throw contracts at them that they can choose to take, and when they choose that one, they're in that plot for until that I resolve that, and I can string
or until
contracts.
The contract is done.
Right. Until that contract is resolved. And I can string another contract onto the end of that would continue the plot I want without it being, feeling forced. Because they could do a different contract that might not be as lucrative.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, you've done this. Now the next thing I want to do is, in this part, is over here, and you've now built a better rep with this house. So they want to hire you again, and they'll give you better terms. Or you could do a whole new contract somewhere else where you'll have to start building your reputation up with these people. Which do you want to do, Eric?
So, would you like to make money and get better tech? Or do you want to deal with shithole pirates again? I would like to make money and get better tech, please.
More money or fighting crappy pirates. Now, fighting crappy pirates does have little benefits.
Yeah, you get to get all folk hero-y in the local area.
Also, your mechs tend to get a little bit less shot up.
This is true.
Actually, yeah, the full folk hero-y thing could be kind of fun to do at some point.
Yeah, that would actually be kind of cool.
Um,
But
but yeah, so but even within as you're probably getting a guess, getting to a
yeah,
pure sandbox or a purely directed game doesn't happen very often.
no. And the only time I could think where a purely directed, like on the rails game, where it wouldn't be incredibly infuriating, it would probably be a little infuriating, but would be tolerable, would be if you're actually playing a military unit, like with an actual chain of command,
Yep.
and they're telling you go here, do this.
Yep.
You're not playing mercs or anything. You're actually in the military unit,
Yep.
or the FBI, or some other governmental
Yeah.
agency.
But even then, you're still going to have some freedom because, well,
Yeah.
otherwise this is not an RPG in my personal opinion. I mean,
No,
it is,
this
but
is
it's not a good one.
it's
So
masturbation for the game
why
player,
don't so we sort
for
of
the
talked
game
about.
master rather.
Sorry.
In a purely directed, like hardcore, stuck on the rails, can't get off at all type of campaign, it largely boils down to masturbation for the game master.
Well, honestly, it's really moves into sort of directed improv theater and isn't really
Right.
As Blue Kawadi brings up, he's reminded of the common DM advice: the players will ruin your plot no matter what. I prefer the
Yeah.
phrasing: no plot survives contact with the players.
Yeah. Same sentiment, basically.
Yeah, it's not so much that they ruin it; it's that they change it. Is the big thing.
Yeah.
At any rate, Eric. So we've sort of talked about what what the two types of games are. So, Eric, well, off the top of your head, Eric, sort of, what would you feel sort of the biggest strengths are of a sandbox game?
Sandbox games' biggest strengths are just the obvious one, freedom. You can pretty much go and do whatever you like and affect things. You want to go and shoot the king in the face? Go right ahead and shoot the king in the face. And make yourself God Emperor, and then you have other problems to deal with. I mean, you're entirely allowed to do that, and hilarity ensues.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. The biggest advantage for it is, especially for the players, is the complete freedom of doing what you want to do.
Exactly.
Now, this
You
sort of
want to free all the serfs and put together a workers' utopia in medieval Europe? Go right ahead. We'll see how that works out.
yeah. Now, one of the big drawbacks to a completely sandbox game is it's not so much on the player side; it's on the game master side, in my personal opinion.
It's really rough for a game master.
It's a lot of work, and especially a lot of work during the game, because
Yeah.
First off, you have to have enough stuff prepared so that you know how the thing you've got everyone around the players will react to how they will react to what the players are doing, and then you have to know how their reactions will affect other things further out, and you have to be able to do this on the fly because since you're not actually you're not sort of imposing your sort of a plot on here, your job as a game master has become incredibly and almost entirely reactionary. So you had better be damn well good at improv,
Yeah.
and keeping track of things on the fly because otherwise things are going to get very strange very, very, very quickly. And honestly,
And from a player point of view, it's really easy to get listless and aimless in a sandbox game.
yeah, because there's no direction. I mean, there's well, we're doing this cool thing, and do we want to keep doing this cool thing? I mean, I don't know. Do you want to do something else? I mean, what do you
Let's
do?
go do something else.
I mean,
And
we've conquered this moon. I mean, what do we do now?
what are we gonna do now? We could go fight the dragon. You want to go fight the dragon? Oh no, dragons are boring. Let's go. Let's go ride pigs. Okay, let's go ride pigs.
Well, that was fun for 30 seconds. Yeah. So, so honestly, yeah, that's the big thing is that it's a combination of things. Basically, the players very well might get bored. If you've got really good players who are really good at self-motivated and coming with good sort of plans for what they want their players to do, and GMs are very good at reading what the players are doing and putting basically things in front of them that what the players want in front of them so they can do it. It can be a lot of fun and it's really cool.
Mm.
But there are ways to actually make that easier and more fun, I think, personally. But we'll get to that in a minute. So from there, we can move on to sort of what the strengths and weaknesses of a more directed game are. The first obvious strength of that is, honestly, it's the
You actually
GM.
have a sense of purpose.
The players have a sense of purpose. They know what they're supposed to be doing. The GM has a structured plot. He knows what the players are, he is able to see what the players are going to be able to do. The most extreme example is a classic dungeon crawl where the players are in a dungeon and the GM knows what options the players actually have and where to go. I mean, or so it means that the GM basically moves all the work for the GM to pregame, and usually ends up cutting down the amount of work the GM has to do, because he
Yeah.
only has to worry about the area the players are currently working on, and what will
A
happen.
lot of modules are very directed campaigns.
Yes. Well, and that's because they have to be written down ahead of time, and they have to basically you limit the options because you you want to be able to be run with multiple different groups of people who tend to think a little bit differently. So if you narrow down their options, you're more likely to be able to get a similar experience for different people playing the same adventure. Which which is how you can actually sell them.
Right. Otherwise, you just can't do that.
Right. The drawbacks are, of course, that it can get stifling for the players. They can feel like they don't actually have any options.
It's very easy to get feel very stifled in a directed campaign, particularly if the game master is not subtle about it.
Right. Or even if it's not necessarily that they have to be subtle, but they have to give the players some options.
Right.
There's got to be some choice, otherwise it's the game master's story. And again, we're back to it. It's a play, not an RPG. And there's nothing wrong with a play, but an improvisational play. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for an RPG, which is different. And similarly from the game master standpoint, a more directed game means less opportunity for them to be creative, because they don't have the that whole, oh crap, wow, I didn't think of that. How will I react to that?
Right.
That'll come up even in a directed game, but in a more sandboxy game, you'll tend to get more things like that. But yeah, so I think there are obviously some other strengths and weaknesses to a directed game. But those are the sort of the big ones. And the biggest one is, as we said, is that the players really can feel stifled and feels like they're on railroad tracks, and that gets kind of frustrating.
It can get very frustrating. I've played in a couple of those too.
Yeah. So honestly, I think in many ways most games end up being something of a hybrid, but they also tend to be predominantly in one of those two areas.
Yeah.
You very rarely see something sort of smack dab in the middle. You tend to see like a sandbox game.
Yeah, it seems kind of like a unicorn. Something that is rare to the point of mythological.
Yeah. Honestly, most of the games that I've been involved in tend to be a bit more sandboxy with sort of plots that are sort of hanging over them. And if the players want to interact with them, they can. And they usually do, because they go, oh, wow, there's something directed for us to do, and we can choose how we want to interact with it. Similarly, even in a more directed game, I tend to make sure that there are choices for the players to go, and they can choose which direction. I usually try to make sort of like, okay, there are 3 different sort of plot arcs that I'm thinking about doing, and we'll see which ones the players decide to follow.
And there's something nice about a directed campaign done well, as long as you have options.
Yeah, exactly. Because it feels more it feels like you have a purpose, which is a good feeling
you have a goal you're working towards.
Right, exactly. You have a goal
beyond
you're working
just
towards.
Get my giant venerable red worm dragon mount.
Yeah. But you have an idea of where you're going from the start, as opposed to you start out, you don't know where you're going at the start, but you can sort of develop your sort of overall plot, your own character's goals in a more sandboxy game.
Yeah.
But we can go back to, as I said, As a prime example, back to the example of the Sci-Fi Pirates game I was running, which was primarily a sandboxy game. It
Mm.
started out with basically, okay, the players are all on this prison ship where the hyperdrive goes completely wonky and flings them out in the middle of unclaimed territory. So they're completely lost. Their star charts are broken. The ship is crashing onto a planet. They manage to land on it, and the prisoners are now free. And basically, most of the prison guards are they manage to escape their prisons, and this because the player characters were all mostly prisoners. And
You're right. There was one who was not a
there was
prisoner.
one who was not a prisoner, and he joined her character, who was he joined up very quickly.
We didn't give her a choice.
No, you really didn't. You said you're working for us, Doc, and the doctor said, okay, Yeep. Don't kill me.
This is a blaster pistol. You're working for us, or we make your head into a canoe.
Mm. At any rate,
we're jerks in this game, just so you know.
yeah. So I dropped them in this situation and then said, okay, I have a couple ideas of things that are happening in this part of space, but let's see what the players want to do. And the first thing they did was, okay, well, there are two pretty obvious options here, which are either try to repair the ship that they were on or steal a new one.
We stole a new one.
And there were multiple options for ships you could have stolen, but I put the giant, shiny, candy-like awesome ship right in front of you,
Which we, of course, stole.
Yep. And that was the one that had the most plot threads hanging off of it.
Right. And that was, yeah, I actually remember no one else wanted to steal it except for me. So I ended up making a lot of fast talk rolls to get them to go in my plan.
It's like, we don't want to steal the Federation. The Federation.
We don't want to steal the spook ship for the giant space armada. We're not stealing their spy ship, but it'll be cool. No. It'll have booze on board. Okay, we like booze. How do you know it's got booze on board? Well, all spooks are drunks. You know this.
So yeah, and basically from there, I had a couple of plot sort of threads that the players could have interacted with. And they eventually, I basically put a few things. Okay, well, if you want, I assume you guys want, since you guys are pirates primarily.
Arr.
Okay, there's a pirate. You actually have enough star charts to know where a pirate base is. You can go there. You can basically get some information about somewhere where so you can get more star charts and areas where you might be able to find good plunder. And then that plunder eventually led to an actual plot, which you guys followed up on, and it was fun.
Yeah.
And that's how you stumble across the Marcon. Because
Poor
I'm a complete
jerks.
bastard.
Yeah. Stupid space spiders.
So that's sort of an example of a sandbox game with some directed elements, but they're directed elements more. They're not so much directed. They're directed elements, and there are things the players can. They're basically plot threads that the players can follow if they choose to. And moving over to sort of the directed game I ran that I was using as an example, the MechWarrior game.
Right. Giant robots.
Right. Again, it was they're mercenaries. They're working for a mercenary company, and so they basically, in theory, the way it was structured is they were sort of loosely affiliated. They're part of a larger merc company. However, they were designated as sort of the sort of freelance, sort of pseudo freelance part of it. They were a small self-contained unit within the company that could work on smaller jobs. And if they needed them, they basically all the contracts they took, they had a clause that if the main company needed them, they could call them off that job to help out on what they needed.
Which never came up.
No, it never did come up. It would have eventually, but it probably was going to be happening soon.
Right.
Given that the clan invasion was starting to get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the next sort of contract was basically going to be, okay, actually there was definitely one, no, that we did, that sort of came up. You guys had just finished up a job when the company basically said, okay, we have a job, we're on a job and we need you here. That's when you actually, that was during the one where you actually found the recon base.
Oh, right,
Spy
where
base.
I found the old Starlink base.
Yep.
Right. I ran into Grey Death Legion, who were looking at another Starlink base, which happened to be on the same planet. like across the valley.
Yeah, that's where you found the spy satellite and such.
Yeah.
And that's when you found out the clans were coming.
Except we didn't know they were the clans because they're like, what's a fucking clan?
You're like, who the fuck are these people? Why do they have green birds on the sides of their ships? Wait, those look like they're armed spaceships.
No one
Jump
arms
ships.
spaceships.
No one arms
Not
jump ships.
drop ships.
Not anymore. Wait, what? And why do they have green birds on the side of them?
Must be some pirate gang. Yeah, that's it. Pirates. Which means their mechs will suck.
Oh god, why are they shooting us before we're in weapon range?
That's not how this is supposed to work.
So, yeah. But basically, that was sort of the basic framework, and then from there, I basically said, okay, here are 3 different contracts you could choose from. Which one do you want to do? And
Right.
then that led to another one, that led to another one, which led to the one where that led to another one, which led to the main companies. I was debating where the main company would end up, was basically plot, sort of actual. If you were actually like looking at it from a story standpoint, it didn't matter. It wouldn't have had actual thing. But in terms of like how I'm handling things behind the scenes,
Right.
what sort of arc the main company ended up on depended on what of the sort of which path the players were taking. So that eventually the main company would pull them into a mission and it would be important, and eventually that would lead to the clans. But the players had choices of how they got there, and it would have depending on what you did would have changed which clan you ran into and such. I mean, there was a chance.
I mean, we had the option to run the Ghost Bears instead of
it's definitely possible.
clan plucked chicken.
Or the Smoked Jaguars. It's possible.
Oh, great. Clan Toothless Kitten.
Sort of. They're the ones who actually They're the ones who actually orbitally bombarded a planet.
Okay, Rabid Toothless Kitten.
So yeah,
you can tell I got a lot of respect for the clans in BattleTech.
I respect the Ghost Bears.
Yeah, because the Ghost Bears aren't dicks.
And the plot isn't on their side.
Yeah,
Unlike
they don't have the power of plot like Clan Wolf does.
So so do you have any? Eric, you have as we've covered, Eric doesn't GM a lot, but when you tend to run games, how do you sort of structure things in terms of sandbox versus directed?
There's usually like, thinking back on the games I've run, there's usually a quick burst of like the first session or two of directed, which is mostly just making sure the players get together and stick together. And it gets kind of sandboxy for a while until I decide that until I get a feel for the players and what they want to do, and then the various like similar to what you say, there are various nebulous ideas for plots that are happening in the background that I don't bother to define until I figure out what the players are doing or want to do.
Okay. So do you have an example of that?
There's an Iron Kingdoms game I was running a while back where this is years ago. And, the initial burst was to get everyone together was, guess what? Necromancer shows up in town, fucks you, and screws your shit. You guys are now forced together and have to run because Necromancer will kill you.
Okay.
And
okay.
that turned out to be the wrong thing to do because it ended up like having a couple players decide that their characters are now insane. But
oops.
Yeah. But then things got kind of, once they were safe, quotation marks, they were given, I threw a bunch of different sort of nebulous plots out there for them to pursue and go upon because, well, they're adventurers now, might as well do it. And that eventually led them back to said Necromancer, and hilarity ensued.
So most of the games you run, you basically said you start out directed, move into more sandboxy, and then there it becomes kind of directed based on what the players want to do.
Right, and it'll get as the players become more clear about what kind of as the characters become more clear about what kind of people they are, and what their goals are, things become more narrowed and directed again. It's sort of bell-shaped, or not
Okay.
shaped, sort of oblong, almond-shaped. And I'm making it sound much more intentional than it is.
Right. I understand. So yeah, I actually, I mean, that's honestly how my gut feeling is I mean, outside of, games which are very heavily based on going from, like, very heavily based on, like, a big sort of, big campaign idea. Like, this is, okay, we're going to do like a super module type thing. Like, we're going to do the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah,
You know,
for example.
right. Which is, it's, again, it's a big module, and there's a lot of stuff a lot of choice you have, but it's pretty directed.
It's
Basic,
7 levels of dungeon crawling,
right.
but good dungeon crawling.
Very, 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 very cleverly balanced dungeon crawling. But at any rate, aside from stuff like that, I think most sort of homebrew campaigns tend to do what Eric just described. And primarily not because, it's because, it's sort of how I think how a lot of games just sort of it's sort of how things end up going, no matter what your actual sort of intent is. Like a lot of games I've run, I've come in and sort of say, okay, this is my intent. I'm trying to do a sandboxy game, and then I basically start, so I need a motivation to get the players together. So that starts out a little bit directed. And then I said drop a few plot threads here and there, and they choose one to follow, and then I basically just keep doing that plot thread, and it becomes directed again. Except that I usually am thinking, well, they've got the option to leap off this plot thread and go do something else if they really want to. But usually at this point they're invested in that plot, so pretty much the only exception,
Mm.
the primary exceptions to that are, well, the Pirates game I really didn't have a major plot thread going on. I just had a lot of things that were going on that you guys could choose to interact with
Right.
if you wanted to. And since you guys were pirates, I really couldn't. I had to be more reactionary because that's sort of the
Right.
whole point
It's
behind.
like a supervillain game.
Right. Um, whereas a game like the Amber game that I was running, uh, I really, really just basically had introduce characters to each other. Big event happens.
Go.
What do you do? Okay, you try to do this. Well, this is what happens. You try to do that. Well, this is what happens. Okay, you go there. This is what happens. Oh, you look into this. Well, this is what you find out. Okay, so you're actually finding out the big threat to actually everything's going on. Cool. Okay, you want to go there? Fine. Okay, how do you want to solve this? You're doing what? All right. Huh. How will that actually work? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I had a basic sort of, there was a big bad who had a plan. And the players could have chosen to, honestly, they could have chosen to side with the big bad if they wanted to. Um, they eventually murdered the big bad after she stopped being quite as insane as she was. Of course, they didn't really know that. Um, and it was going on pretty. Honestly, I was not surprised they actually decided to murder her. She kind of deserved it for a lot of things. She wasn't a very nice person. Uh, I mean, nobody in an Amber game is a very nice person, but she was pretty bad for an Amberite. Well, she wasn't an Amberite; she was a Lady Lord of Chaos, but
Yay, Chaosians.
um, and not very happy with the status quo. Let's just put it that way.
What Lord of Chaos is?
There are some who actually are who are basically like are resigned to the status quo at least.
Okay. It's not very Lord of Chaosy.
Well, no, they're again they don't. When I say the status quo, I mean the relative balance of power between Amber and Chaos.
Ah, okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Not so much, because the Amber's domain doesn't stretch all the way to the courts, obviously.
Right.
So but Lords of Chaos, it's really weird. There's a lot of really interesting little subtleties in Amber, but long story short, basically, the main bad guy in this story wanted to basically, effectively blow up
Kill
the pattern.
everything.
Wanted to basically destroy the pattern completely. Wanted to turn
Yeah, I'm
everything
down with
back to
that. Screw
chaos.
patterns.
What?
Screw you, fractals.
Sorry?
Screw you, fractals.
Pretty much. Basically, She thought that everything went horribly, horribly wrong when uh, when the pattern was made, and wanted to return everything back to what it should be, which was chaos. And there were reasons she thought this, and she also had gone a little bit loopy with power, with massive, massive, overwhelming power. She was kind of unfair.
And then she got neck stabbed.
Well, then she got partially killed, brought herself back, and then she was assassinated.
So she was neck stabbed twice?
Kinda.
Okay. Uh, so, dead air.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I'm talking about. Is
Yeah.
it's rare again. Obviously, it's very rare that you have you a completely pure game of either sort, but it's also very rare that you end up directly in the middle. You tend to have one or the other with elements of those, is my experience, and a lot of games end up having basically a directed start, a more sandboxy middle, and then going back into a
This
directed
is back,
concept.
on whatever plot point is actually happening.
Right, exactly. And that's how a lot of sort of homebrew campaigns go, at least in my experience.
Yeah. And longer ones tend to oscillate between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. If a campaign goes on long enough, you'll have bouts of very sandboxy parts, followed by segments of very directed parts, followed by sandboxy, followed by directed, etc. Campaign goes on long enough. My experience really has been that you tend to have both elements in there,
Yeah.
and the campaign style will change mid-run. But honestly, my personal sort of recommendation for game masters out there is to start, especially if you're new to game mastering, start off with a directed game and then expand the player's options outwards from there. It sort of goes back to what I said about back in Jamming 101, the Jamming 101 episode. Start small and then build outwards. Um, if you want to do a more sandboxy game, that's fine, but I would hold off on that until you had a bit more experience reacting to the players, especially if you're just starting off with this group of players. Start small, build outwards, and then start doing reactionary stuff. But again, even when you're starting off with the direct game, make sure you give the players some choice because they'll want they'll
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. You can't have them completely on the rails, so they will rebel against you. There's a webcomic out there worth reading called DM of the Rings, which basically shows you exactly how everything can go completely wrong by being too much on the rails.
Yep. So yeah, that I think covers most of what we wanted to talk about between sort of comparing these sort of styles of games.
Yeah, I'm also less talkative tonight for various reasons.
Right.
So
So from here, I think we're going to move into questions and answers. So if you're listening to us live and you have a question you want us to answer, feel free to put it up in the chat. We're going to hit the two questions we got via over the web before the show first, and then we'll get to questions from the chat afterwards. But start thinking about writing them down if you're listening to us live and have a question. We're going to start off with the one we got via Twitter. This is from the Zodi lady, who is a listener. She's enjoys the show immensely from what I've seen from her various tweets. She says,
oh, good.
so yes. So one of my players accidentally created a city-destroying sentient plant. He wants to make it his daughter. Help? This is the one that I said I had to share.
Oh, that's awesome.
Of course, it'd be kind of I crave more details on this at some point.
Oh my,
If you actually have more details, please email them to us at surlygrognards@yahoo.com, Zoe Lady. I have to hear this story.
it's cute that he wants to make it his daughter, because I'd go the other direction, make it my lover. It destroys cities, it's sentient, it's green. And then I'd be the supervillain, and you'd have to kill me.
That's just awesome. Again, I have to hear the story behind it because Ryu Planeswalker may have an answer to this. We'll hold off on this, Ryu. As I said, hopefully she'll email it to me. Again, surlygrognards@yahoo.com, so we can have more detail on it. If you have your own side on it, feel free to email us also, Ryu. But we're not gonna. I don't want to take up too much time on that
Yeah,
right now.
you can always kill the plant. You'll have to do it in a pretty awesome way, but you can always kill the plant and remove the problem
But
entirely.
yeah, honestly, if you were asking for help on this, if it's actually a problem, um, yeah, you can kill the plant. There are plenty of ways to kill plants, even sentient city-destroying ones. Um,
I would advise a giant sentient swarm of locusts. Because they have a problem with sentient swarms of locusts. Sentient swarms of frogs. And then you get sentient swarms of snakes to deal with the frogs.
then Eric, stop, stop, just stop. All right. So again, I think it's an awesome. That's absolutely hilarious. I wish I had more way to help. If you actually need help, I don't know how to handle. He wants to make it his daughter. My brain sort of
You can always give him exactly what he wants.
Yeah, honestly, giving the player exactly what they want often is the best way to screw them over.
Yeah. I mean, it's a plant. Does it really understand things like paternal bonds? It doesn't reproduce sexually, so it wouldn't have any real concept of that. It's, yeah.
Well,
Think
again,
about the psychology
it
of
is
plants.
sentient, so
It is sentient, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it understands paternal even or familial bonds.
right. Remember, it's sentient. It's very likely very alien.
Yes.
So you could do some interesting stuff with that also, and it'll honestly, he could feel sort of paternal towards it, or if he could feel very paternal towards it, and yet it's alien, and he'll eventually have to destroy it, which will make for a nice tragedy.
Yes. Because it doesn't. It might not necessarily be evil, but it will. Yeah.
But it's
There are
but it's
things you can do with this, which are really cool.
yeah. So yeah, honestly,
And plants do not reproduce sexually, because
well,
I was wrong, and I'm not admitting to it, because I'm currently a politician.
Eric
That was
is,
not meant to be a factual statement.
yeah, Eric is yes. Plants do reproduce sexually, but they don't. It's very likely it wouldn't understand that sort of relationship because again, it's yeah. So from there, again, I want to hear more about the Zodi lady. Please email
Yes,
us. We got to hear
this sounds hilarious. This sounds great.
I
I'm
we might be able
excited
to give you more help.
to hear about this.
All right, this is an email we got from JD. Once it comes up here, come on. Here we go.
Come on, Peter.
Hi, Eric and Peter. First off, he has a comment regarding our episode, How to Kill a PC. He says, I think you forgot to mention the possibility that a player does so many stupid things in a row the GM has no choice but to kill his character, as there have to be consequences to your actions. You're right, we did forget that.
We did forget that. We always assume a certain level of intelligence with players.
But yes, you say, don't go here. There's a giant, world-eating dragon in here, and he hates all non-dragon life forms. And the player keeps moving forward into the cave. Eventually, you say, fine, you go in the cave. You confront the dragon. It eats you.
But I just wanted to give him a hug. That way he'd stop hating all non-draconians. That's not how this works.
Om nom nom. Meddle not in the affairs of dragons, for you are tasty and good with ketchup.
I hope I'm not good at ketchup. Ketchup is disgusting.
Yeah. All right. His question, however, is: have you ever had a group or a DM that has ruined a gaming system for you, like ruined the system itself for you, so you can never play it again or just hate it with a passion? If not, what's your least favorite system and why? He rules out the system that shall not be named for the obvious answer. I think we've actually touched on pretty much our most hated system outside of that one, which I think is the same for both of us, which is Palladium.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Palladium. I was going to say second to D&D, but Palladium is more hated than that.
Yeah, as we
okay,
both said,
fair enough.
Palladium Fantasy Roleplay, you could play this, or you could play second edition, which does the exact same thing better, and that's damning with faint praise.
That's not praise at all. That's
saying, wow, Palladium, you really suck.
Yeah.
So, have you ever had a group or a DM that ruined a system for me? Huh.
I'm trying to think. This would be way back in the mists of history.
Yeah. Yeah, because basically from high school on, I didn't really have any bad groups.
Most of my bad groups were in high school. Um, None that really ruined a system for me. Um, there've been groups that I never ever wanted to play again. I didn't want to even, but never really blamed a system for what was obviously a bad group or DM.
Hmm. Yeah, I've never really done that myself. Um, God, I'm trying to think. I'm sort of, I after a certain point, there was a long period of time where I basically played. There was a period of time where I basically was only playing one system at a time for a little while, for long periods of time. Basically, after I got into second edition AD&D, I played that almost exclusively for several years until I discovered GURPS, which I did play exclusively up until I started playing second edition D&D again, and we played both those sort of alongside each other for a while. And then from there, I discovered Champions, which I played alongside GURPS, which again, that's when I started broadening out to play multiple systems at once. And then from there, when I discovered things like Feng Shui and other smaller game systems and such, and third edition and so on and so forth. And I really haven't had a system ruined by the groups that I played with since then. I've had
I've had
systems ruined by the system since then, in
yeah.
that period, looking at you, Palladium. The group I played the Palladium game with was great. We played something else afterwards because we all said, "Wow, this system sucks. Why aren't we playing AD? Why aren't we playing D&D?"
Yeah, no shit.
We literally
Um,
basically said, "Why aren't we playing D&D?" Threw the Palladium Fantasy Role-Play books aside, picked up our D&D books, and recreated our characters in that.
yeah, I've never had first couple World of Darkness games I was in were pretty vile. One because a DM wanted to run things completely on the rails, won't let us actually do anything interesting,
Huh.
and another because it quickly devolved into paranoia without any of the fun or whimsy. But
Oh
that wasn't
God.
the system's fault.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I'm not. As I've said, I'm not the world's biggest fan of White Wolf systems in general. Um, I
I really liked them for a while, but I think then I really liked them for a little while simply because there's similarity to Shadowrun in that I get to roll big buckets of dice.
mhm.
But yeah, I've largely grown out of that. To be fair, White Wolf feels very maudlin to me now.
Hmm. I've heard things. I've heard they've improved things in the newest versions of World of Darkness stuff, but I've
Yeah,
just not looked into it.
I haven't looked into that stuff, unfortunately.
I have the second
Unfortunately,
edition Exalted book, which I think mechanically is a massive improvement over first edition Exalted.
yeah, I
Um,
never played Exalted. I was all the rage for a while, and I just never ended up in a group for it. So
I basically played in a very brief Exalted game with Peter Shaw, my friend Jesse, and some other people. Um, that lasted like 2 sessions maybe.
right,
I actually kind of liked the game world. We just none of us liked the mechanics.
fair enough.
Uh, I honestly, I would love to actually try Exalted again because it's one of the few White Wolf game worlds I like at all. I'm not. I'm sorry. I like Mage. If you strip Mage away from the rest of the World of Darkness, I'd like Mage. Um,
You
I,
kind of have to, because then mages sort of end up in this weird, the most vulnerable at the same time most powerful things in the world.
yeah.
So why haven't they completely taken over?
The answer is they kind of have.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The
Sorry,
technocracy.
the technocracy kind of has.
Yeah. Okay.
um, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of World of Darkness. My first experiences with it weren't very good. And it wasn't, but again, it wasn't the group's fault. It was I didn't like the system, and I wasn't a big fan of the game world to begin with. So
Right.
I don't blame honestly, the game master was a great friend of mine in college. I had a lot of fun gaming with him in other games, um, but I basically bowed out of the vampire game fairly quickly because I didn't really like it. And I didn't blame him. I said, it's just not my cup of tea, Leo. And he's like, okay, sure, cool. The game kept running for a while, and they had a lot of fun with it, and more power to them.
Yeah.
I went back to
And it's not
running.
to say I haven't had good World of Darkness experiences. I've had a couple good ones, but yeah, it just goes to show you, like, I tend not to blame systems for shitty DMing
For the most
or
part, yeah.
players.
I as I said, most of the times when I've found a system is ruined, it has nothing to do with the group. It has to do with the system.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played in games with bad groups. But they were all second edition games, and way back when. Uh,
And
and
yeah, I got
it wasn't the system's fault back then. It really was the group. Uh,
no. It's totally the system's fault. Second edition is terrible. You just didn't know any better at the time.
Again, I'm not blaming the problems with those games on the system. The system was not the cause of the reasons I didn't enjoy those games.
Okay.
That was entirely the group. Um, Honestly, I mean, it boils down to the fact that with a good, even with a, I mean, like even a terrible system like Palladium, with a good group and with a good group of players whom you get along well with and a good game master, the system matters a lot less. And you can have fun with almost any system, even if it's a system you normally don't like. That's my personal take. Um, I'm trying. I mean, like honestly, I mean, I've as a great example right now, my Thursday night game is a second edition AD&D game that Clark won here in the chat. My friend Peter Shaw is running. I'm enjoying it because the group is a lot of fun. I hate the second. I hate second edition. Hate's not the right word. I don't like second edition. I would much rather be playing playing third edition or fourth. But I'm I like the group. And it's a good story. Peter's doing a good job running the game. So it's been sort of I'm enjoying things.
Yeah, and a good group can fix a bad system,
Oh, absolutely. Um,
and a
and
bad group can ruin a good system.
can make it can ruin. Yes. Again, I've I've thankfully never been in a group of players involved in a group in systems that I love that like Hero System or Feng Shui or GURPS. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. I have been involved in a GURPS game with people that were awful, and I had to stop the campaign because I didn't want to play with these people anymore. But that was very clearly not the system's fault, and
Yeah, I had a similar experience as Shadowrun, honestly.
Um, but I've fortunately all the hero games, the people I've played Hero System with, and all the people I've played, and primarily with Hero System is primarily champions. I've done a little bit of non-champions super Hero System, but 95% of the time I've done Hero System, it's been superheroes because I like superheroes. Superheroes are awesome.
Superheroes are pretty awesome.
Um, but I've never had a bad feng shui group, ever. I think it might
Yeah,
just be that once once people start playing it, it has some it I've seen people who were skeptical about it and tried it and really got into it. Like people who you wouldn't think would actually enjoy it, so they're going, well, this is a lot of fun. I can think of exactly one person I can think of who probably who I know isn't a big fan of feng shui and has played it before, and I think you know who it is, Eric. We won't we won't mention
yeah,
names.
I can guess. I can't be entirely certain, but
Yep. Um, Actually, I know two people who weren't big fans of it, but who've tried it. But at any rate, it really is mostly neither of us really blame the system for the group. And if it's a bad system, it's a bad system. I mean, and there are plenty of them. There are
yeah.
there are bad systems out there. I mean, there's one which will not be named. There's
What is the one that will not be named?
you know which one it is.
Palladium?
No, that we named Palladium. I'll type it in the Skype chat.
Rifts? Rifts
No,
is also Palladium. That doesn't count.
don't say this.
Oh, that one. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even sure it exists. I've never actually seen a copy of it. I've just heard about it. Well, Why am I not allowed to say it? Will it like
Because it always
jump
leads
through
to
the window and kill me or
to
something?
bad discussions.
All right.
No, we're not gonna name it. I don't want to give it. I don't want to give it any credit.
You know what happens after this is done? I'm going to go downstairs and say its name 3 times into a mirror and see what happens.
You're welcome to do so, Eric.
I'll probably be jumped by that version of the Candyman. What are you typing? Stop typing.
Because that's the sort of game it is. Exactly, Max Rage. So, so at any rate, are there any questions from the chat that we got before? We got about 5 minutes before we should wrap things up. So, does anybody in the chat have any questions they want to go to? Let me check the.
Ryu Planeswalker wants to be your co-host after I am killed by that which shall not be named.
Yeah, no. Oh no, I'm not saying no to Ryu. I know that you won't be killed by it.
No, I'll probably just laugh at it and bad things will happen, and then I'll be on the stream next week and I'll go, you guys are jerks. Because it's usually how I greet you guys.
Actually, there's one other email that I wanted to touch on. I just remembered. We got an email from Marty, our friend Marty.
Oh, hey, Marty.
This is coming from, we were talking, someone was asking about, when we're talking about guns in 4th ed.
Yes.
And we're talking about, you were asking me about armor-piercing mechanics in 4th edition. And Marty actually brings up the way 4th edition actually simulates armor-piercing attacks. And I'd completely forgotten about this.
Oh, 4th edition does have an armor piercing. Okay.
Sort of. You don't target armor class, you target reflex.
Oh. Oh, duh.
Yeah, exactly. I had the exact same reaction of like, duh! So in that case, honestly, if you want to go that route and make guns, basically say guns, don't target armor class, they target reflex instead.
They target your will.
Reduce the damage, or remove, or seriously reduce the proficiency bonus, or remove it entirely, because otherwise they'll become completely unbalanced. Just as an aside.
As realistic as that would be, game balance is more important than realism.
Sometimes. It depends on the type of game you want to go with. But I will just say this: if you basically do what I suggested and copy a crossbow into the guns, and then take them stock and have them target reflex, whenever normally say target AC, they will quickly become the best weapon in the game. So I would either reduce the damage or remove the proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
Or at least reduce the proficiency bonus, either or, depending on.
Well, they are primitive guns. Make the proficiency bonus -2 instead of +2.
No, that will actually make them suck. That's going too far. You drop it to 0 at most.
Okay.
But as I said, as an aside, basically it does depend on how powerful you want them to be relative to other weapons. It's what you want for your game. If you want guns to be dominant, honestly, you could actually keep the proficiency bonus, have them target reflex, and basically make them take forever to reload. So you get like one shot off with them, and then you have to switch to melee weapons or something.
Or just carry 15 of them festooned about yourself.
Something like that. I mean, but think of ways to balance them beyond that.
Heavy.
Because targeting reflex is very, very good, especially if you're getting your proficiency bonus. Other than that, I think that pretty much covers the questions for this week. Yes. Thank you, Marty, for that tip on the armor-piercing thing. I can't believe I forgot that last week.
The two of us, I mean, it was so obvious. It was jumping up and down and yelling at us, and we were like, well, I don't see anything. You see anything? No.
Nope, I'm dumb. I'm dumb. So, Eric, any last thoughts on Sandbox
we're supposed to be talking about
directed campaigns?
Distracted by.
Yeah.
Yeah, finding the happy medium is like the magic unicorn thing that'll make everything awesome.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, that's what it boils down to. Is you're not finding what works for your group is important, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
And it'll be different for every that magic super awesome happy medium will be different for every group.
the sort of the happy point will be different for every group, and additionally, different different types of stories will require different levels of freeformness versus direction.
Right. I mean, an investigative story is necessarily more directive.
Right. As opposed to just sort of, hey, you guys are a bunch of adventurers in a fantasy world. Have fun.
Yeah.
Or God help me, Amber. I mean,
Yeah.
oh, you want to walk up to some other random dimension. Well, okay.
Okay, off you
Crap.
go.
How do I handle
I'm going
this?
to go to the land of shrimp.
If you insist, there are lots of shrimp here. They're all shrimpy.
Yes. And I am hungry.
Yeah. So I think that wraps things up for tonight, Eric.
I think that does.
All
I think
right.
we are done.
Yes, we're done for the week. So we will be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on twitch.tv/MechaGM. You can, if you were here watching us live, we appreciate you live audience as we always do. If you are listening just recorded, thanks for listening. If you have any feedback, you've got any questions you'd like answered on the show, you've got suggested show topics, or you just have some random thoughts you want to share with us, please feel free to either comment in the blog section where you find the recording of this, or you can email us at surlygrognards@yahoo.com. That's surlygrognards@yahoo.com. We love getting feedback. We love getting questions, guys. Please, please, please let us know what you're thinking. We don't have a topic yet for next week, but I'm sure we'll think of something. We always do. At worst
We
case, we'll
always
start
do.
talking. At worst, we'll just reminisce about things we really enjoyed in games we played over the years, because we do that anyways during our shows usually. So
Yeah, it's usually what they boil down to.
one of these weeks we have to get Chris on specifically so he can tell us some of his stories because they're awesome.
Because he has some really good stories.
So, other than that, if you want, as I said, you can email us at the surlygrognards at yahoo.com email address. You can find me on Twitter at MechaGM. I'm also on Facebook and Google Plus, Peter Bowman, and you can find Eric's work on the Eric's work, where he's the artist for the webcomic Boston Arcanum, which you can find at bostonarcanum.com. It's good stuff. It's really cool, and they've been updating again, so check it out.
Yes. In fact, I think we've got... I honestly am not certain what has updated since last week, but there's at least one new page, maybe two.
Ooh, swanky. And I want to thank Sam East, otherwise known as Sam Honey here in the chat, or Muffin on some of the other IRCs I frequent, for the awesome title card that she did for us a while back, and I just want to give her props for that because I forget to do that sometimes.
Yes,
Sam,
it is an
thank you
awesome
for the
title card.
It's freaking awesome. I'm
It
still
really
amazed
is.
at how spot on you got Eric for me just describing him.
It is kind of spooky.
You had a photo of me to work with. So other than that, thanks for listening. So I just want to say goodnight, and say goodnight for my friend Eric here. Basically, Eric, you say goodnight to everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right, guys. Be happy, be safe, and happy gaming, guys. Take care.
Later, humans.